Welcome to the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. I'm Alicia Haygood. As the primaries come up on July 21st, I hope you all have that calendar date marked and ready to go or are voting early. We are going to be interviewing all of the Scottsdale City Council candidates running for those 3 seats. So each week we're going to be featuring 2 candidates. Everyone will receive the exact same 5 questions. They will each get 15 minutes. This is your opportunity to really listen to what the candidates have to say, as I will not be interrupting or having a debate or rebuttal with them. I really just want the opportunity to be heard for what they stand for here in Scottsdale because it matters. So be sure to get out there and vote for July 21st. But first, Scottsdale residents have been putting their trust in our sponsor for over 2 decades when it comes to real estate agent, Sean Shackleton. For over 25 years, Sean has guided buyers and sellers with straight talk, smart strategy, and data that keeps you ahead of the market. If you want a calm pro who won't let you settle for less, reach out to Sean at 480-734-7277 or visit theshackletongroup.com and make your next move a winning one. The Scottsdale election primaries are July 21st, and voters will soon decide who will help guide some of the biggest conversations facing our city. And decisions made over the next few years will really impact residents across every part of the community. This episode we'll be hearing from Ethan Knowlden and Barry Graham. So each candidate, as I said, will answer the 5 same questions for the same time. And no matter where you stand politically, this episode is really designed to help you listen and be informed heading into the polls. So let's get started with Ethan Knowlden. Ethan, thanks for joining us today. He is a retired attorney and business executive with more than 35 years of leadership experience spanning finance, law, biotechnology, and nonprofit healthcare organizations. Since moving to Scottsdale in 2018, he has been active in the community service, including leadership roles with the DC Ranch Community Council, the Scottsdale Industrial Development Authority, and the Arizona Housing Coalition. Ethan is running for Scottsdale City Council with a focus on fiscal responsibility, public safety, thoughtful growth, and protecting Scottsdale's preserve and quality of life. So Ethan, let's get started. Scottsdale's tourism economy drives major revenue through resorts, nightlife events, and entertainment districts, but many residents say traffic noise, overcrowding, and the short-term rentals are really hurting the quality of life. So how should we balance protecting our tourism economy while making the full-time residents feel like they're not living in a permanent entertainment district, I should say?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to your listeners. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm not one here to say there is no problem. Obviously, there's some issues with regards to the interaction of our long-term residents and the visitors that come. But let's also understand the visitors don't want any of those issues you just recommended or just referenced either, right? So it's about finding that right equilibrium. You know, at the end of the day, we need to be able to generate the revenue that we've historically generated. So we'll take a step back. You know, sales taxes and bed taxes, well, they're probably about 5 times what our property taxes are. So, you know, when the folks come here and they shop and they stay and they dine and they play golf and they have fun in our town, well, they're actually helping keeping our property taxes low. The other thing is they're generating a market for amenities that our residents themselves enjoy. So the Fashion Square Mall that's right next to us, it probably wouldn't be the Fashion Square Mall if it was just for Scottsdale residents. So there are benefits to having these visitors here for sure. But we need to make sure we find that right balance. So, you know, we've been talking about things for a long time. You know, in the 2020s, in the 2000s, the City Council actually did some things to kind of revitalize downtown and Old Town. And maybe they were a little too successful, right? So I think what we've seen since then is the council trying to pull that back a little bit with character area plans and things of that nature. But there's probably more that we can do. You know, one thing that came up on council agenda and then kind of disappeared was a noise ordinance. And, you know, in my mind, that's something that clearly has to be negotiated between adjacent residents and the, you know, purveyors in the entertainment district. Has to happen. What I'd like to say, because I've had years of negotiation, is when both sides are equally unhappy, we're probably getting close to a deal. So, you know, we've got to find that equilibrium where our entertainment district can continue to thrive, but there is an opportunity for residents to have a voice in how loudly they thrive. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here, a couple things actually. I'll keep going. One is, you know, our downtown area certainly has to be an area that's safe, especially at night. So making sure our police are properly staffed, trained, and equipped is really important. And I think the sensitivity around that is one of the reasons why I've been endorsed by the Police Officers Association. Now, you also mentioned STRs, so we'll take a quick second, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So they're both a vital component of our accommodation offerings.
And really, short-term rentals is what we're talking about
Short-term
for STR.
rentals.
Just want to
Sorry
make
about
sure.
that.
That's
Yep.
okay.
Lawyers, we always use acronyms, right? So short-term rentals, they're a vital part of our accommodation offerings in the city, but they can also destroy neighborhoods. So again, it's finding that balance. I think what we have to do is, and it's true, politicians always say, we need more tools from the state, right? Well, I had somebody online give me a hard time about that and say, look, can't just keep throwing up your hands about it. You've got to do something about it. And he's right. We've got to be more aggressive in policing bad actors, and we've got to be more creative in finding ways to license and to revoke licenses. There's no question, if we keep waiting for the state to help us here, we may not be, successful. So let me go ahead and let you ask me another question before we go on for 15 minutes.
Well, part of that, as you just mentioned, is the short-term rental and then preserving these single-family neighborhoods that Scottsdale is known for and approving more condos, apartments, and mixed-use developments. So you've had supporters argue high-density housing is necessary for workforce housing, but we've also in economic growth. But the opponents on the other side are saying that changes the character of Scottsdale, the strains the infrastructure, traffic, and all that increases. Where do you stand on apartment and high-density development, and are there areas of the city where you believe it simply should not happen?
So let's start with some good news in this area. Scottsdale is largely built out.
Right.
There are a few plots very far north along Pima where single-family housing is zoned. And everything else in this town going forward is likely going to be redevelopment or infill. The other fact is that over the last 4 years, we've only grown by about 2% in population. And in fact, last year, we actually lost a few folks. I don't know where they went, but we lost them. So it's really not population growth, it's height. When I'm out on the campaign trail, that's what I hear more often than anything is, I don't like these tall buildings. And I agree, it's not consistent with the character of Scottsdale. Now, that doesn't mean we're stopping development, because a city that isn't continuing to evolve is a city that's declining. So we need to continue to development, but again, that's largely going to be infill and redevelopment. And there are real opportunities to actually revive neighborhoods by doing things like infill and redevelopment. So, for example, you've got a lifelong resident that's now selling their single-family home that they've lived in for 50 years. There's a couple options here. One is an option where that house gets sold and up comes an 8-bedroom Airbnb party rental. Mm-hmm. That's probably not what the neighbors want. What they might consider is having some long-term residents next to them in a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex. I think there are real options here to have improving neighborhoods without saying no development whatsoever. Now, let's talk about apartments a little bit. There are places in the city where apartment complexes can make sense. Again, where it's consistent with the character of the neighborhood. So I'll give you an example. This is a proposal that I've heard about. Can't tell you how I would vote on it when I'm on council, but this is north of Indian School on Miller. It is adjacent to a multifamily, multi-story structure to the north and to the west. To the south is the fire department, and to the east is the soon-to-open Whole Foods. This is a perfect location for, in my mind, multifamily housing. It's a very walkable location, and I hope that this project moves forward and comes to council for approval.
All right. Another hot topic, water. Before I ask this question, I want to say I know that there's been a lot of water debates that are going on within the current council and stuff like that. So please be aware that this, we are taping this episode before and things change constantly. But water is very important and has been a hot topic with us for a long time. So we just approved a 4.5% increase to water rates and a 3.5% increase to sewer rates to help cover the rising electricity costs, infrastructure upgrades, and efforts to secure new water sources. As we all have heard, the Colorado River supply is dwindling. How should Scottsdale balance the need for long-term water security and infrastructure investment without placing too much burden on residents and businesses?
Well, your question kind of begs a different question about who else should pay for it if it's not residents and businesses. It's probably the users of the water, right? But our council isn't even getting to that question. They've backed away from this entirely. And that's unfortunate. So as your listeners probably know, there's been quite a debate about this year's 26-27 budget,
Correct.
which includes a 5-year capital improvement plan component. And over $200 million of water-related projects just kind of disappeared from that without really any discussion. And that's unfortunate. So I think, what we need to be thinking about here is, what is our long-term water security going to be? So you mentioned the Colorado River. Exactly right. We are at risk here. 70% of our water in Scottsdale comes from CAP, the Central Arizona Project, which is the Colorado River. Mother Nature isn't treating us very well, and hasn't for about 30 years. So we know that at the end of this year, really at the end of September, which is the water year, we're going to be facing cuts from CAP, probably significant cuts. How do we deal with that? Well, look, it's not time to panic, but it is time to plan. And the good news is in 2024, the City Council and the Water Department had a plan. It was the 5-year strategic plan for water, and it included recommendations on investment in 5 different things. It's about diversifying your sources of water. And yes, APRW is one of them. It's in there for a lot of reasons. Most importantly, it's water that we control. It's water that we can bring online sooner than any other source of water. So I think we need to remember that we're not talking about all those nasty terms that you hear out there. What we're talking about is diversifying our sources of water, making them available in a blended fashion to our residents so that we have long-term water security.
I kind of want to circle back to something you said earlier about the state saying, we need to kind of handle ourselves and quit blaming the state for everything. But Scottsdale leaders have increasingly clashed with the state, Arizona over state laws that really ride local control on issues like housing density, short-term rentals, water, zoning, etc. Do you believe the state has gone too far in limiting Scottsdale's ability to govern itself? And how would you push back, or how would you work with lawmakers when state priorities conflict with local concerns?
Well, I like to say that you can either be perceived as part of the problem or be perceived as part of the solution. And for a long time, unfortunately, Scottsdale on a lot of issues has been perceived, at least at the state level, as being part of the problem. The Scottsdale response of just saying no really hasn't produced good results for us at the state level, right? Typically what happens is the state passes a piece of legislation and we don't necessarily like what it's going to tell us that we have to do. So yes, we definitely need to improve our relationship with the governor and the ledge. We need to make sure that we are partnering with our sister cities here in the Valley and work through the League of Cities and Towns to make sure that our voice is heard downtown in Phoenix. But also, we need to turn that paradigm around and start being perceived as part of the solution. What that means is, well, we need to innovate on some of these issues. We need to actually take the laws that have been passed and find out how they can work successfully in Scottsdale. Now, does that mean we need to solve the whole of any problem in Scottsdale? Absolutely not. But it means we need to be showing that we're trying.
All right. Last question. I'm going to ask 2 questions. You can choose which one you'd like to answer is what I'm doing. So what is one major issue facing Scottsdale that you believe City Council is overlooking, underestimating, or avoiding, and what specific action would you push if elected? Or what would you do to improve accountability and really rebuild the trust in City Hall?
So the good news is that I have an answer for this that I think actually answers both questions.
Let's hear
it. Not surprisingly, it goes back to water, but it's a little wonky. So give me a moment. So the city of Scottsdale is a charter city. That means we're kind of unique in that we're largely governed by what's in our charter document. It's kind of our constitution. So that document grants all really powers to govern the city to the elected council, with exceptions, right? They have the authority to create policy. Now, the city manager, by contrast, is the one that implements that policy. And that's an important distinction, but it's also kind of a gray zone, right? What's policy and what's implementation, right? There's always a tension between the council and the city manager over that. Now, I think that what our listeners need to understand is that a city manager can really greatly influence policy, by a lot of their actions, by what they do, especially with regards to the budget. So, a policy can be delayed. It can be deprioritized. It cannot be staffed by what you do in the budgeting process. And I'm afraid that's probably what's happened this time around, especially with regards to the 5-year capital improvement plan. We had $200+ million of water-related projects in there that disappeared under, our city manager's revision of the budget. We really don't know, what's going forward right here. And, I'd like to think this was just a misunderstanding, but, I'm concerned that it was intentional. I'm concerned that it was an opportunity to kind of just push this can down the road until after the election, But I think real leaders, they address the real problems, and they, come forward with real solutions. And then they build consensus around those solutions. That's what we need on council right now. We need people who are actually going to stand up, listen to the experts, listen to our community, and lead this city. We don't seem to have that right now.
Well, thank you, Ethan, and best of luck to you in the upcoming elections. Again, please go vote. The primaries are happening on Tuesday, July 21st. We can early vote as well, but please go and do more research. You can go ethan4scottsdale.com. We have all the information in the description of this episode and our YouTube channel. In the meantime, best of luck, Ethan, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Barry Graham is a current Scottsdale City Council member, and he's a certified public accountant, a lifelong Scottsdale resident seeking a second term in office. He has served on the Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, and Building Advisory Board of Appeals, bringing experience in city governance and financial oversight. Barry's campaign focuses on fiscal responsibility, taxpayer advocacy, and maintaining a resident-first approach to Scottsdale's future. So, Barry, thank you so much for being here today. We were going to start by talking about Scottsdale's tourism really drives our economy through revenue, through the resorts, nightlife, events, and entertainment district, but many residents say traffic, noise, overcrowding, and short-term rentals are really hurting the quality of life. So how should the Scottsdale balance protecting its tourism economy while also making sure the full-time residents here don't feel like they're living in a permanent environment or entertainment district?
No, I mean, it's a great question. And, as we were talking about before the show, congratulations on your show.
Thank you.
All the success you have, the signups, the followers. So hopefully this will even boost it even more.
I love it. That's what we're here for.
Tourism in Scottsdale it's everything. If people call it, the golden goose, or the goose that lays the golden egg, and you don't want to harm that goose. If we are to do things that hurt our tourism, that's really going to hurt our quality of life. And the reason why is because so many tourists come here and they pay taxes, they pay bed taxes, they pay sales taxes, they drive our economy, they go to our restaurants, and they shop here. And so what are we doing? We have to make sure at a city level that we're not hurting that. And that means everything from not just stopping the deluge of apartment rezonings. I don't believe that people come to Scottsdale to look at canyons of apartments that are busting their views or blocking their views and snarling their streets. Congestion, like you said, is a big problem. And so the first 4 years on council and what I'm running on is protecting quality of life, watching tax dollars, making sure they're spent wisely, and stopping harmful ideology in our local government.
You kind of mentioned how people coming here really don't want to see these tall apartment buildings and stuff. So let's kind of talk about that. There has been growing tension between reserving these, single family neighborhoods and really approving these more apartments, condos, mixed use developments, as we've all heard. Yeah, both sides. The supporters argue that the higher, denser housing is necessary for the workforce housing and economic growth. But the opponents say that it really changes the character of Scottsdale. We don't need the infrastructure strain. Where do you stand on this in apartments? And do you think there is a place in Scottsdale that is okay of an area to build these apartments?
I actually don't know if there's two sides to the debate, because the people that want to build the high density they're making money off of it. And that's kind of the one side. And I think what you're going to see from other candidates sitting here is nobody's going to say we need more apartments. But what they're going to say is maybe they're going to sort of tap dance around it. They're not going to get a clear answer like you're going to get from me, which is that nobody's voted against more apartment rezonings in 3 years than me. I voted against Axon's. I'm the only incumbent running for re-election that voted against Axon's 2,000 apartments. I also voted to protect citizens' referendum on that massive apartment complex. and I voted, and I did not vote to waive their water requirements, which is something that unfortunately happened. We have to respect the people who live here and the residents who vote for us and that we work for. And when we run for office, we pledge to serve them. And, as far as, both sides of the story, I mean, Scottsdale's economy is on fire. Every business wants to invest here and move here because we have some of the best labor markets, some of the best talent pool you can find people. And their workers want to live here. They want to live here because of quality of life. They want to live here because the economy is so strong. And they want to live here because we have excellent schools. It's a great place to raise a family. And so so you have to listen to what candidates say, but I think it's even more important to watch what they do, actually how they vote, who they associate with, and most importantly, or very importantly, who are they funded by? If you read their campaign financial disclosures, they say one thing, and then they're accepting donations from somebody with a clear agenda that clashes with those statements.
Okay. One thing that you kind of brought up when it comes to Axon and the building is we have increasingly, as Scottsdale, clashed with the Arizona legislature for state laws that really override local control on issues like the housing density, short-term rentals, water policy, and really the zoning authority. Do you believe that the state has gone too far in limiting Scottsdale's ability to really govern itself? And how would you push back? Or how would you work with lawmakers when state priorities really conflict with local concerns?
Everybody here is going to say yes, they have gone too far. They confiscated our ability to zone our short-term rentals, and that has just done immense damage, immense carnage to especially our southern zip codes, because now you have out-of-state short-term rental LLCs scooping up our properties, especially in 85251, 50, and 57. That's where something like 80 to 90% of the short-term rentals in Scottsdale are. And there are no other council members, candidates, there's candidates from that, but I'm the only council member from one of those zip codes. I grew up in North Scottsdale. I live in now. I'm raising my boys. My wife and I are raising our boys in South Scottsdale. But, even on our block, we're a third short-term rental. And not only does that, artificially inflate house prices, but like I said, it empties out neighborhoods. It destroys our neighborhoods. You lose the neighborhood character and the community value. And it also empties out our schools. You don't have families in there raising kids. So, and also they require subsidies from the city when, for security, and people call the cops and things like that. And we're seeing this more and more with the Axon bill. The Axon bill was an extreme scenario where everybody remembers that during the lame duck session, 5 council members voted for the largest apartment complex ever in Arizona's history in North Scottsdale, a place that wasn't zoned for it, wasn't characterized for it, and it was by 4 out of the 5 people that supported it were unreturned to city council and were never going to be accountable to voters again. And so they ran a record-setting referendum that collected something like 26,000 signatures in record time, and Axon executives saw that, and they knew that that was going to be headed for defeat, and so they sought legislative relief, and they created an Axon bill that I believe is unconstitutional, and that it, in essence or essentially, took away or undermined our constitutionally sanctioned referendum. Now, here's the thing. So your question though is, well, if we keep denying apartment rezonings, is the state going to intervene more? The answer is, I don't know, but I think probably not. And we need to call them out when we need to call them out. Like, they're afraid of, their special interests as far as maybe of horizontal development and letting communities actually develop across the whole valley and across the state. They don't want to face those special interests. So what do? They can team up on Scottsdale. Everybody likes to bring Scottsdale down because we're on top. We're proud to be on top. We respect our surrounding neighbors and our communities, but we've had visionaries in the past who have helped us get here, and we need to respect what they've done. Being on city council, I see myself as, and I work for the residents, but I also have to protect the vision of what our founders and our predecessors came to build, because that, in my opinion, is the ingredients that wanted to bring us all here.
One of those things that affects everything is water. And it has been a very hot topic this year. As I said earlier in the episode, we are recording this earlier. Things happen quickly and changes can be made. So this is all based off of the most current information that we have based off this question. But let's talk about the water issue here in Scottsdale. It's one of the most contentious issues. You all just approved a 4.5% increase to water rates and a 3.5% increase to sewer rates to help cover these rising electricity costs, the infrastructure upgrades, and efforts to really secure the new water sources that will be needed as the Colorado River becomes more and more of an issue. Do you support these? I mean, we can talk about your voting, but really what I want to ask you as a current member is how do we balance the need for long-term water security infrastructure investment without putting too much of the burden on the residents?
Right. Well, there's obviously efficiencies you can find. We have to raise rates at least a little bit every year because our labor costs go up, and we are going to be getting some cuts in the CAP, the CAP. Central Arizona project from the upcoming, there's still litigation or pending litigation about what actually the cut's going to be.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is that around September we find that out? Okay.
Somewhere around there, yeah. But there will be, there's still negotiations leading up to it and afterwards.
Correct, yeah.
But, and if we get less water, we base our cost on, the water that we sell. So if we have less water to sell, and we have to, every drop, you have to recover more. We don't want to get to a place like Gilbert that, they artificially kept them low and then they had kind of the chickens came home to roost. And so we just got to keep up with labor costs and capital costs that are going up. But the point is to keep them low, as low as possible. I've been disappointed, though, in this campaign because, especially the other incumbent who's running, and a lot of these candidates, they don't want to talk about the issues that people care about as far as wasteful spending, and making sure our taxes, we actually have fiscal discipline for once, and stopping apartment rezonings and overdevelopment. So they're bringing up the water issue, I think, artificially in a campaign way. And people there's kind of some fear being fomented about, if you don't vote for me, your tap may run dry. And nothing could be further from the truth. I think as leaders, what I'm trying to do right now is get politics out of our long-range planning. Let's get our election rhetoric and our politics out of, away from our water administrators and our water security, because our water is secure. I mean, for starters, we use way less of our CAP allocations every year than we get. So even if they cut it significantly, we still wouldn't use it all. We've got a lot we can do with conservation measures. We're also doing a lot more to increase our supply as far as acquiring water rights and Bartlett Dam expansion. But what I see going on in this campaign is that there's a pressure campaign to approve advanced purified water purification, recycled water, toilet to tap, that kind of stuff. Nobody else anywhere, that has never been done in Arizona. Nobody else does that in Arizona. And I see that as a last resort, where some of my, competitions, opponents see that as a first resort, or they're racing towards it. We have to get our campaign and our politics away from our long-range security, because our water is secure. We're doing a lot to strengthen our portfolio. And you got to look at the fact that, other people who have voted for thousands of apartments and voted to waive Axon's water requirements. In the meantime, then they're saying then they're screaming drought. So we just have to. What our leaders should be doing is calming fears with facts, not stoking them.
That kind of leads me into my last question. I'm going to ask two, and you can pick which one you want to answer. But you kind of went into both of them. What is one major issue that you don't think City Council is really handling, and how would you handle said concern or issue, or what would you do to improve the accountability and really rebuild trust in City Hall?
Well, I would say that, I kind of touch on both, but the
exactly.
there's just so much campaign rhetoric, and people, it's campaign season. It's silly season in a sense. We've got to get this partisanship and this ideology out of and away from our local government, which should be nonpartisan. So I would say rebuilding trust in city government, right? In the 2024 election, the previous election, the mayor and all three council members were unreturned to city office. It's never been done before. It's never happened in Scottsdale. And we have a pretty good idea why. I mean, they were approving thousands upon thousands of apartments despite overwhelming resident opposition. They were approving extreme social ideological plans for climate, which included radical ideas about monitoring and auditing and raising and rationing on our residents. They were thrusting government into ideas, trying to meddle with who public safety hires and promotes as far as ideological anti-merit sort of policies. And there was just so much more as far as, when I was in the first 2 years, I had to uncover $150 million in cost overruns. I'm the only CPA, the only CPA, certified public accountant elected in Arizona. And so I would actually read the financial reports and say, hey, what's going on here? And I would get shouted down when I try to get answers. And so since the last 18 months, we've opened an era of financial scrutiny and accountability and really trying to rebuild trust, because the prior city council, again, they were trying to spend $20-30 million on road diet experiments and bike lane experiments that were just going to snarl or make it worse in traffic. They wanted to fund city-run homeless shelters that I think would really harm our neighborhoods. And it's like, let's get government out of these ideological ventures and let's get it back to the basics. And so what are we doing? We're funding our police. We're actually fully funding our public safety. We're actually putting money back on our roads. We heard over and over again about the degeneration and degradation of our roads. And by the way, we're a tourism city. We need to make a good impression on our visitors. And so this first year we were in there, and then this upcoming budget, $85 million going to our road repairs. For context, they had siphoned money away for other ideological ventures, and that had gone down to maybe $12 or $15 million a year. $85 million in 2 years. We've had deferred maintenance in this city, so we're trying to catch that up, make it a very high quality, comfortable, high quality of life city where our residents feel safe, our residents feel comfortable, protect our open spaces, and then our visitors, our qualified foot traffic visitors are coming here spending lots of money and keeping our economy humming.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I always enjoy you all. And for anyone else that wants to learn more about Barry, I highly encourage you to go visit barrygrahamresidentsfirst.com. We'll have the link to his website where you can do more research as well. And then anything else, be sure to watch the YouTube channel or listen to us on the audio podcast. Before we leave, we want to talk about our amazing sponsor, Jeremy Mueller of State Farm Insurance. He is one to give back to the community and is a top priority for Jeremy and his team. He's been here for over 25 years helping neighbors just like you with home, auto, life, and business coverage. He knows our city, our lifestyle, and our needs. Plus, with 3 local offices, he is always close by. So give Jeremy a call at 480-515-5223 or visit jeremymueller.com, because here we look out for one another. If you want to stay in the loop on everything happening around Scottsdale, be sure to check out all of our social media from Instagram to Facebook to YouTube and more. Have a wonderful week, Scottsdale. Keep vibing, and I hope to see you at the polls.